Hello and welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your weekly dose of the top pro-life news and issues, all from a Catholic perspective. I am your host, Catherine Hadro, in our Washington, D.C. studio. Thank you for joining us. In this week's show, former Planned Parenthood director Abby Johnson reacts to news the abortion giant ousted their president after only 8 months on the job. We speak out against a study claiming abortion benefits teenage boys, and this.
COL 1972 is the new black, that modesty is the new pretty, and that life is always in style.
We introduce you to a clothing line where the pro-life issue is in the very fabric of the company. But first, our top story, the newly formed Senate Pro-Life Caucus calls on President Donald Trump to ensure there will be pro-life protections in the House-passed spending bills. Montana Senator Steve Daines, founder of the Senate's Pro-Life Caucus, is circulating a letter among pro-life senators that asks the president to ensure any spending caps deals in Congress should be paired with a commitment from Democratic leadership to drop any riders that would erode pro-life protections. Some of those anti-life riders would include blocking the expanded Mexico City policy, blocking the Protect Life rule, and preventing an ethics advisory board from reviewing research involving human fetal tissue, among others. The letter, obtained by EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, says the pro-life senators would oppose each of these anti-life poison pill riders and will work to ensure they are not inserted into any appropriations bill before the Senate, either in committee or on the floor. Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma joins us now from Capitol Hill. Senator, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be back with you again.
What do you see as the role of the pro-life majority in the Senate in ensuring there are no anti-life riders in the House-passed spending bills?
So months ago, the Senate sent a letter to the White House saying we plan to be able to make a stand to be able to protect all pro-life language that's ever been in any appropriations bill, the Hyde Amendment, other amendments that have been consistent year after year after year to be able to protect life. We plan to be able to protect those, but we'd ask the White House to also say they'll veto anything if it does happen to get to them. The White House did respond and said, absolutely, we would veto it. We stepped up and said, absolutely, we will make sure that we protect those things that have been there year after year after year. We'll continue to do that. In fact, interestingly enough, the House of Representatives, when they were in the minority last session, demanded that the House function like the Senate did last year with no riders, no changes, everything consistent. Now suddenly that the Democrats are in the majority in the House, now they're saying, well, we want to do a bunch of riders and changes on it, not like what the Senate did. So we're going to ask the House to do it exactly what they asked for last time, and that was do simple, straightforward, protecting all life, all other issues, things the administration has done, not trying to overturn those in an appropriation bill, to be able to stay consistent with how we're doing appropriations and protect the gains that we've had.
Is there one pro-life achievement you see as especially important to protect? What are you keeping your eye on?
Well, we're keeping our eyes on all of them. I'm not willing to be able to give up on any of those things that we've had as standard basic American policy. We've had for years this basic principle that we have an argument about life, and I'm very clear that I believe life begins at conception. I think there's no doubt once the child has different DNA, they're different than the mom, different than the dad. That's a new human being that's there, and I think science backs that up. But for me, that's an essential part of it. But we've also agreed that we're not going to allow any kind of funding for abortion to come from the federal government. We also want to protect things like fetal tissue research and other things, or to be able to use the federal dollars to be able to harvest children that have been aborted. So all those things are basic. That's just an essential protection of life and the dignity of every human being.
Senator, why is this helpful for the president to know ahead of any negotiations with the House of Representatives?
Well, we want both the president to know, we want the leadership of the Senate to know where we're going to stand on it, with a large majority of us, that they won't have enough people to be able to pass a bill if they include some of these riders or try to make changes in presidential policy on it. We want the president to be prepared to be able to veto it. We want our leadership to know that we're not prepared to pass anything like that. And we want the House to know as they sit down in negotiation, this is a non-starter with us. We can take the issues that we had last year, that we agreed to in a bipartisan fashion last year. We can do those same kind of bipartisan agreements this year, but we're not going to give on any of the issues, on any of the social issues, any of the kind of limitations on the administration, and most certainly not on the life issues.
On another pro-life topic, Planned Parenthood's board of directors unanimously decided to fire their president, Dr. Leana Wen, after only 8 months on the job. Dr. Wen claims it's because she did not prioritize abortion enough. What is your reaction to this news?
Yeah, Planned Parenthood came out in a pretty public statement saying they wanted to be more of a political organization and felt like that the new leadership of Planned Parenthood was taking in more of a healthcare direction. That is exactly opposite of what Planned Parenthood has said for years. And we've all known that they're a political action group, that they're trying to push the abortion agenda, that is their main function really is to be able to push that political message, but they always come and say, but we're a healthcare organization, we're just about health. When the new director comes in and says we're shifting us to be more of a healthcare director, within 8 months they fired her and they put in instead someone that's a political operative to be able to be the interim leadership. So it's clear what they really are trying to do. It's not to be a health organization, it's to be a political organization. And I hope that the American people can see it very clearly at this point.
And to that point, just to reiterate, Dr. Wen's departure does seem to reiterate that Planned Parenthood is not a healthcare provider, but truly an abortion group. So, Senator, is this an opportunity to renew efforts to defund Planned Parenthood?
So the defunding portion is actually going through several different segments here. Obviously, Joni Ernst and myself, we pushed through a piece 2 years ago to be able to deal with what happens with the funding that states get to choose. We made sure that that was allowed, and we defunded Planned Parenthood in all of those areas. We still have the Medicare, Medicaid portion that's out there. That part is something the administration is working through right now, and they've done an administration executive order, which now the courts have both supported, and said that if you're going to be a healthcare provider and you also are going to provide abortion, that has to be in 2 separate facilities. For Planned Parenthood on the whole and for other organizations, they've already stepped out and said we're not going to take federal funds if that's the rule on it, and we've said that's fine. We don't have a problem supporting true healthcare organizations. We just don't believe taking a life is actually healthcare.
Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And joining us now in studio for Pro-Life Analysis is Autumn Christensen, the Policy Director for the Susan B. Anthony List. It's good to have you back, Autumn.
Thank you.
Can you put into context for us this effort to ensure there aren't anti-life riders in the appropriations bill? What's at stake here?
Sure. So every year, Congress is responsible for essentially writing the check to run the government, and that's the appropriations bills. And if those bills aren't passed, then the government shuts down. So it's not surprising that this is the place where Pelosi Democrats have decided to embed a whole host of anti-life policies that would really eviscerate the president's pro-life agenda. These are things like the Protect Life rule. They want to override the Protect Life rule and force funding for Planned Parenthood, force funding for fetal tissue research, funding for international organizations that promote abortion overseas. So there's a lot at stake here, a lot of really important policies that we've celebrated, and now we have to defend them in Congress.
What can President Trump and pro-life senators do to ensure these anti-life riders are not included?
Well, we are so thankful for the president's leadership, for Leader McCarthy and Leader McConnell in the House and the Senate, for Senator Daines with the Pro-Life Caucus, for the work that they've done to draw a line in the sand and say, we are not going to allow any of these anti-life amendments to make it through this process. And if they are continued to be included in the bills, that then senators will vote against those bills and the president will ultimately have the right to veto them. But we're very hopeful that that strong stance on their part will avoid us getting to the point of having to have a bill vetoed.
Autumn, you previously led the Congressional Pro-Life Caucus in the House of Representatives. Can you speak then to the significance of the Pro-Life Caucus in the Senate?
Sure. It is so exciting to see Senator Daines start the first ever pro-life caucus in the Senate. And a big part of that is that then he has that platform to be talking to his colleagues and promoting the pro-life agenda, making sure that pro-life policies are protected and that they are advanced. And then, of course, also keeping an eye on all those moving parts within the Senate and within the Congress to make sure that there are no bills that have hostile or negative implications for life that move through the Congress.
In other pro-life news, Planned Parenthood recently fired their president, Dr. Leana Wen, after only 8 months on the job, and they hope to replace a doctor now with more of a political advocate. So, Autumn, what does this mean then for pro-life political advocacy?
You know, it's really been an interesting series of events to witness. It seems like Leana Wen looked at Planned Parenthood's talking points, at the fact that they say that they're a women's health provider, and she said, well, okay, that's the kind of organization I want to be a part of, right? Then she entered into the job and was very quickly confronted with a abortion at all costs agenda. When she tried to deviate a little bit from that, they said, see you later, and replaced her with an abortion activist. So it tells us very clearly what a lot of us knew about Planned Parenthood, but paints a very clear picture of how aggressively attached to an abortion agenda they are.
Really helpful insight on all of this. Thank you so much, Autumn Christensen, Policy Director for the Susan B. Anthony List.
Thank you.
Thank you. With a pro-abortion majority in the House of Representatives, it's crucial pro-life lawmakers stay alert to any attempts to undermine life-affirming legislation. This becomes especially important ahead of negotiations surrounding the appropriations deal in Congress. Pro-abortion lawmakers may try to include a number of anti-life riders, amendments that aren't associated with the bill's main goal in the process. These sneaky additions would undermine pro-life protections. So we need our pro-life senators to stand firm, and that brings us to this week's call to action. Go to ProLifeWeekly.com to tell your members of Congress to oppose any legislation that would weaken existing pro-life laws and policy. When you get to our website, ProLifeWeekly.com, you'll be able to fill out your information and deliver this message directly to your state's lawmakers. We've seen a number of pro-life accomplishments in this administration, from the expanded Mexico City policy to the Title X Protect Life rule, and we cannot afford to lose those great pro-life advances. We must stand strong for life in the face of a divided Congress. Let's make sure our voice is heard. Send your message by going to ProLifeWeekly.com. Turning now to our next story, we have pro-life response to Dr. Leana Wen's abrupt departure from her role as president of Planned Parenthood. Wen announced last week Planned Parenthood's board of directors fired her in what she called a, quote, secret meeting. It's only been 8 months since Wen officially took on the role. This came after a reported clash within the ranks of Planned Parenthood's top officials over the direction of the organization. Wen had argued Planned Parenthood should broaden its scope as a healthcare organization, but says she was forced out by those who felt it should prioritize its abortion advocacy. In an outgoing message to staff, Wen wrote, quote, the new board leadership has determined that the priority of Planned Parenthood moving forward is to double down on abortion rights advocacy. The news came 10 days after Wen wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post saying she was recovering from a recent miscarriage. Joining us now is Abby Johnson, a former Planned Parenthood clinic director turned pro-life leader and founder of the ministry And Then There Were None. Abby, thanks for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Abby, just minutes after Dr. Leana Wen tweeted she was fired, you reached out and replied back saying, Leana, I know exactly how Planned Parenthood works and know all about their secret meetings. If you ever want to talk about your experience in complete confidence, I'm here. I will help in any way I can through your transition. Abby, why did you feel it was important to reach out like that?
You know, I've been where she is. I wasn't fired from Planned Parenthood, but I know what it's like to feel incredibly betrayed by them. And that's what I saw in her. In the things that she was posting on social media, I just felt like this is a woman who is shocked, who is betrayed, and she needs to see that we in the pro-life movement are welcoming of her. And even if she doesn't become pro-life, that's okay, but we still need to reach out to her in love. And, you know, I tell people I didn't leave Planned Parenthood and then become some pro-life warrior, right? I mean, it was a process. It was a transition. And I really believe that something is happening in Dr. Wen's heart right now.
And she mentioned in her tweet she was fired after a secret meetings. From your experience, how common are secret meetings in Planned Parenthood, and what does that reveal about their work culture?
It's very common. So what it sounded like is that Dr. Wen went to Planned Parenthood and said, look, I need to make a transition out. Planned Parenthood does not tolerate notices. So if you tell them, I'm thinking about leaving, I'm going to leave, here's my 2-week notice, here's my 30-day notice, you are immediately ousted from the organization. Former workers including their own president, are a very serious threat to Planned Parenthood as an organization. It's why I'm sure they made her sign an ironclad non-disclosure. And I think that's why they said, let's get her out before she can get any of our documentation. They don't know, is she mad? Is she leaving angry? So let's just get her out as quickly as possible.
And Abby, it's been about a decade since you left Planned Parenthood. Praise God. Was this debate we're seeing now on philosophical differences happening when you worked there?
No, not really. But Planned Parenthood was a different organization, even just 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we were secretly trying to promote abortion. We were secretly trying to employ and engage abortion activists. Now, 10 years later, they've become very brazen with their abortion activism. We were still living the lie that Planned Parenthood was about preventative health care services and about family planning. That's where we were still living 10 years ago. Now it's not that way. Their direction, their focus has completely moved away from all of those other supposed health care practices, and they are now solely focused on normalizing abortion at every turn.
In your opinion, does this internal conflict that's now being out in the open, does it indicate a greater level of tumultuousness inside of Planned Parenthood right now? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. And we're not just hearing it from Dr. Wen, but we're hearing it from the workers who have come through and then there were none. They're coming to us and saying, look, I got in this to be a nurse. Now they want me to go lobby at my state capitol for abortion rights. They're talking constantly about quotas, increasing abortion quotas in the facilities. That's not what these employees, that's not why they got involved with Planned Parenthood. So I think, yes, morale is very low right now inside of Planned Parenthood. It's always significantly lower than the rest of the country, but I think right now there's just things are really in a state of flux. This has been a bad year for Planned Parenthood. We've got President Trump defunding them out of the Title X program. We have state legislation across the country passing heartbeat bills, other state legislative protections for the unborn. Unplanned came out. I mean, it's been a rough year for them.
Dr. Wen was fired just 10 days after writing publicly about her recent miscarriage. Did that surprise you?
I mean, I would like to say yes, but no. Planned Parenthood is not an organization that values motherhood. So they would not be an organization that really grieved with her in regards to the loss of her child. Though, when I saw that she had written that, my heart really went out to her. I'm a woman who's experienced a miscarriage myself, and I thought, this experience might be a turning point for her. I saw that she was really trying to justify her work in abortion activism through that op-ed that she wrote. But I just sort of saw through it. And I thought, no, that she's trying really hard to hang on, but she's a woman who's grieving. She's a woman who's mourning. And my prayer at that time was that she would be a woman who came to the realization that the same infinite dignity and worth that was bestowed upon her child at the moment of conception that she miscarried is the exact same, that she would realize that it's the exact same dignity and worth that is bestowed upon every child at the moment of conception.
And finally, Abby, if Dr. Leana Wen happens to see this, what is your message to her?
My message is just to reach out. I won't tell anybody that you've reached out. I'm not going to shout it on Twitter or Instagram. We are a confidential place for abortion industry workers to go. And we're a safe place. And we are a group of people who understand where she is on her journey right now. We understand that transition. And, some of us understand what it is to make that transition in the public eye like she is right now. And, we just want to be a soft place for her to land.
Abby Johnson, founder of And Then There Were None, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Of course. Thank you.
If you want to know more about Abby Johnson's story about leaving Planned Parenthood, you can order the movie Unplanned on EWTN's religious catalog starting August 13th. Just go to EWTNRC.com. When we come back,
I tell my girls all the time, like, we need to put our God goggles on because we need to look at opportunities that are coming our way and see, how would Jesus look at this opportunity?
hear how a family jumped into the fashion industry, and all in support of life. Stay tuned as EWTN Pro-Life Weekly continues after this break. This week, we celebrate the feast day of Saints Joachim and Anne, Mary's parents and Jesus' grandparents. It's traditionally understood they endured infertility before finally conceiving the Virgin Mary. Saints Joachim and Anne, pray for us. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I am your host, Catherine Hadro. A new study claims when young women have abortions, the young fathers benefit. That is this week's Speak Out segment. The University of Utah published a study in the Journal of Adolescent Health claiming young men who, before the age of 20, were involved in a pregnancy ending in abortion were more likely to pursue higher education and graduate from college compared to young fathers whose partners chose life. The study examined a group of nearly 600 men. 23% of those pregnancies before the age of 20 ended in abortion. The lead author of the study told Reuters, quote, "We never discuss male partners and how they may benefit from access to abortion." This study is sickening to read. And what's the point of it? To tell teen moms, hey, get an abortion, do it for the men. I'll tell you one man who likely thinks he'd benefit, Dr. David Turok. He's one of the authors of this study, and he's also an abortionist who works at Planned Parenthood. This is no coincidence. It further proves abortion is a tool of the patriarchy and that abortionists care about the bottom line, not the well-being of women and children. The truth of the matter is that abortion benefits no one. Not the child who is killed in the womb, not the mother who undergoes the invasive procedure, and not the father. True men know that and protect life. Remember, there is something you can do to counter today's culture of death. Follow this week's call to action. Go to ProLifeWeekly.com to tell your representatives to oppose any legislation that would weaken existing pro-life legislation and policy. The pro-life movement is filled with people passionate about the cause. But are you so pro-life you wear it on your sleeve? We introduce you to a pro-life fashion line for this week's Pro-Life Focus. In the fashion world, many mainstream and familiar brands ranging from Nike to Tory Burch have donated to Planned Parenthood. This is a problem for families who only want to pay pro-life out of their pocket.
For our family, it's very difficult for us to purchase a $50 shirt from a store that we know proudly supports Planned Parenthood and then turn around and donate $50 to our crisis pregnancy center. It honestly cancels out the good that we are doing.
Seeing the potential for pro-lifers to better leverage their power of the purse in the clothing industry, Christian wife and mother Carla Diodesi and her 3 daughters came up with a stylish new idea.
There's over 50, sadly, culture of death brands that donate back to Planned Parenthood. And so that just made my daughters and I really sad. And it also made us feel very unhealthy purchasing their products. We didn't feel healthy wearing their products. So we decided to launch our own fashion line.
The family's new fashion line launched an online store in January 2019. It's called Culture of Life 1972, or more simply, COL 1972. While abortion advocates celebrate the year 1973 for its Supreme Court Roe v. Wade decision, this company wants to elevate when life was still honored in this nation.
COL 1972 is the new black, that modesty is the new pretty, and that life is always in style.
This pro-life mission is weaved into the very fabric of what they do. COL 1972 works with a pro-life designer and vows to give 10% of its proceeds back to life-affirming groups. They frequently donate to pregnancy centers and even sponsored a bus for the most recent March for Life. And in June, COL 1972 flaunted their fashion line at the 4th Annual Pro-Life Women's Conference in New Orleans, Louisiana. The spring collection is considered street chic.
So a lot of joggers, a lot of camo hats, leggings for the kids, and there is just positive messaging, everything for which we stand. We don't like to talk about those things that we oppose. We like to point everyone to everything for which we stand. Logos are on the right side of shirts. Logos are on the right sleeves because we believe that we're on the right side of this issue. You're not going to see our models in promiscuous poses. You're going to see very healthy poses. You're going to feel comfortable with your 14, 15-year-old looking at our website. You're going to see boys being boys and girls being girls.
The pro-life, pro-family mission is also reflected in how COL 1972 runs their company.
I wear like 10 different hats for COL 1972. So do all 3 of my daughters and my husband. But what's really great about it is that we love being together as a family. We can do everything out of the house pretty much. It's an e-commerce company. Everything is online, unless we have pop-up shops on occasion.
For this family of non-designers, the decision to jump into the fashion industry was definitely a risk.
It's a huge leap of faith. And so for anybody that wants to take a leap of faith, you know, with wisdom and prayer, I think that it can be done.
But since its launch in January, COL 1972 has been a runway success.
The whole entire team that God has brought together makes me want to burst into tears because it's just a lot of people that are almost more pro-life than we are. They are working overtime for us.
Prominent pro-life figure Abby Johnson recently became their ambassador, tapped Carla as her official stylist, and inspired the Abby J collection. COL 1972 doesn't consider people who buy their clothes as customers, but as members of their growing life tribe. It's a tribe setting the trend to build up a culture of life for both the body and soul.
We believe that God is using this fashion line to be such a big light that we're actually prayerfully eclipsing the darkness.
If you want to shop Culture of Life 1972, the website is col1972.com. And that does it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Until next time, be sure to reach us at ProLifeWeekly@EWTN.com or connect with us on social media. Just search for EWTN Pro-Life on all the major platforms. And remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.